Welcome to Critical DMG, a podcast about two best friends who might have grown up but never grew out of their love for the Game Boy. We will be playing and reviewing every North American title released on Nintendo's original handheld console. This is episode 7. I'm Tony, and for all you know, I could be dressed to the nines for this episode.
And I'm Jeff, and I am feeling a little bit congested the last couple of days, so hopefully that doesn't come through in my audio, but if it does, I apologize. As we mentioned last time, and if you couldn't tell from the title when you clicked in, we are going to be doing something a little different this week. We are going to be doing a year in review for 1989. So we've played all of the games released in North America for the Game Boy in 1989, and we figured we'd do just kind of a little wrap-up episode, talk about kind of some of the things we liked, some of the things we didn't like, and then kind of go through a bit of different awards, if you will, for the best and worst games and different categories that we've found. That's kind of the general structure. We'll try to keep it similar to how we usually do it. We'll start with some mechanics, we'll go into some cosmetics, and then we'll have a little bit more fun at the end, like we usually do with the quiz, but it won't be a quiz.
No quiz this time.
No quiz. And we also will not be answering last week's quiz question. You'll have to wait one more week for that if you're playing at home. No quizzes today. But, Tony, kind of general feelings. How'd you like 1989? It was a short year for Game Boy releases, but how'd you like it generally?
For the initial showing of the Game Boy here in the US, I would have to say out of the 6 games, probably half, probably half were solid, fun. I would probably recommend other people to play them. I would say split pretty much down the middle, like 50-50 for 1989.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there were, only 6 games, so not the biggest showing, but for half a year, and for some of the titles that we got, I think it was quite good. Decent diversity, with, Tetris and, a little bit more puzzly style game, and then some action games, Super Mario, some sports games, all of those things. So I think the diversity was there, and I think there were some things that I would have been extremely happy closing out that year and looking forward to new releases for the Game Boy.
Yeah, I think that there was a good sampling of game genres in this initial 6. Like, I know it's not a lot, just the 6 games, but you had a platformer, a puzzle game, some sports games, Alleyway, I guess, sort of still kind of a puzzle game.
Yeah, whatever that is.
It was a good, smattering of Game Boy games that you could get a good idea of. These are things that I can expect maybe I will be playing on this system now and in the future. And I think it was all right. Probably could have been better. Definitely could have been better in some places, but probably could have also been much, much worse. I think if it wasn't as good as we probably are both feeling like it was, I don't know that the Game Boy would have necessarily done as well historically if its initial launch of games here in the US were that bad.
Exactly.
Not saying anything for the other regions that it released in, but just from the, US-centric point of view, if those first bracket of games had just all been stinkers, I don't know that the Game Boy would have really pulled the market share that it ended up doing historically.
Yeah, exactly. I think, my general take is if I bought a Game Boy when it released, I would have been happy, and I would be excited for the years to come. So I think that's a good place to be.
Right.
We do want to touch on something that you briefly mentioned. What games didn't we get from, around the world? So we are focused primarily, or I guess solely, on, US titles. But we do want to use these year in review episodes to kind of recognize other areas and things that we potentially didn't see or things that we might see in the future, but were released in this year for other areas. Is there any title specifically that was released primarily in Japan? That was like the other region that was really doing anything at this time. Were there any titles that you're kind of sad that we didn't get, or anything that you're looking forward to that might release in the future for us?
Let's see. Well, you're right about Japan being the only other region in the market right now. PAL regions didn't even get the Game Boy until basically halfway through 1990, so there won't be any real comparison there until that year in review, some 60 games later, or whatever it's going to turn out to be for that. There's a lot of games in the Japanese releases that we didn't get this year, but I know we will get next year. So I don't want to say too much about that, but just right off the list, quick look, I would say the ones that I really think I would have liked to see in this first sample of what the Game Boy has on offer. Final Fantasy Legend would have been really nice, to have like a solid, this is what the Game Boy can do for RPGs. Revenge of the Gator, I love pinball. That one would have been really cool to see. There's a lot. Like I said, a lot of these are going to show up again, though. So I'll save a lot more of that talk till the looking forward section.
Yeah, exactly. So there were 25 games released in 1989 in Japan for the Game Boy. There were only 4, I believe, that were not released in North America at all. Mostly, I think a few kind of puzzle games or like Mahjong.
Shogi.
Which I think that could have been a nice addition as well. I don't know how open the 1989 North American market would have been to Mahjong, but...
I love Mahjong.
Yeah, it's a really fun game. So I think that would have been a nice addition as well. But I think a lot of the ones that I'm excited for, just like you said, they're going to be coming out pretty soon. So we'll talk about that, I guess, more towards the end of the episode when we look into the future and discuss what we're excited about. All right. With that, is there anything else you want to say before we kind of jump into our, our categories and kind of the bulk of the episode?
No, I'm pretty excited for this episode. I know that the list is short, but I think that we're going to make the most of it and have a good time.
All right. Broad overview. We have 6 categories for mechanics and for cosmetics. Each one we are going to do a best and a worst. We'll go through and we'll talk about which game or which input we think is the best and the worst for each category. And then after that, we have a few superlatives, if you will.
I know that this year in review episode's probably going to be a little bit maybe frustrating just because some of the answers might be a little obvious, or the selection might seem a little redundant. That's only because there's so few games to pick from right now. That'll definitely change in the ones following this one.
We're going to try not to rehash too much from the episodes. So if you want more in-depth conversation about any of these, definitely go back, listen to the episodes as a whole. But again, as we go through, we'll kind of clarify a bit more. And if you have any questions or you think we're not doing a category justice, let us know and we can respond to that in the future. But that's how we're doing it for now. So with that, let's start the mechanics. So Tony, worst game controls. What game do you think had the worst game controls?
Castlevania The Adventure.
100% agree with that. Yep.
No fanfare about that. I had to think about what constituted worst game controls. There really was no answer other than Castlevania The Adventure this year.
I agree. Yeah, it was so slow. The platforming was so bad. It just felt bad.
And there's a difference between worst game controls in that Castlevania's controls were bad and not fun to use and actively harmful to the gameplay experience versus something else that we might have not liked to play necessarily, like baseball, but those weren't bad controls in the same way that Castlevania The Adventure's bad controls.
Exactly.
Just for clarification.
Yeah. What game did you think had the best controls?
Tetris.
I agree with this as well. So I do want to say we did these lists completely separate. So we were not, influencing each other.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I agree. Tetris, it just felt very crisp, and it felt like it was doing kind of exactly what it was supposed to be doing. And it just felt good. The controls felt good.
I think a good sign of Tetris's good controls was that you didn't even really need to use all of the buttons all of the time, like rotating pieces, moving things in certain ways. You could just kind of rely on navigating with the D-pad and one of the face buttons, not both of them, and your experience was pretty much the same either way, and it still felt good no matter what.
Exactly. And it is we'll say, pretty simple game, but the controls felt intuitive. You push down, the piece goes down faster. You hit the button, it rotates. It felt intuitive, and I think that's something that I'm always looking for with game controls, are things that you don't have to read the manual. You can just open up the game, start playing, and it feels like it's doing what it's supposed to. So, moving on to our next category, boss fights. Who was your least favorite, or who was the worst boss fight for you?
I had to really think about this one, especially because there were only 2 games that even had boss fights in the first place this year. But I went ahead with Dracula from Castlevania The Adventure.
Okay. I went with the level 3 stone guy from Super Mario Land.
Interesting.
Yeah, why was Dracula your nomination or your pick for this?
So I usually am a fan of multi-phase boss fights if they're done well. I think that it can be a good way to really amp up like the threat of a boss, especially a final boss. But in Castlevania The Adventure, because the game already had the bad controls working against it, when you were fighting Vampire Dracula, the first phase, it was so easy, apart from the platforming kind of getting in the way. But once he turns into a bat and kind of just knocks back and forth across the screen, releasing other bats, and you're trying to get into position to be able to hit him, the platforming really works against you in a very frustrating way that I really didn't have anything else that could have gone on the list than this.
That's fair. So I'll agree with you. It was not an extremely fun or engaging boss fight.
But you picked something else. What is your reasoning? I'm so curious. What is this? What made this the worst boss fight for you?
Again, you can go back and listen to Super Mario Land if you want to a little bit more about the stone guy. But essentially, at the end of World 3, there's a boss that throws rocks, and I think the way you're supposed to beat him is jump on the rock and then jump over him to get to the, little toe hitch button thing.
Right.
I tried a couple times to do that and could never get it to work. We both mentioned how much we disliked the boulder, mechanic of that game. And so it felt like really the way to do it, and the way that we both did it and beat the boss was you just iframe it. You just
damage boost, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And so the mechanic feels bad, and then the way you beat it, it makes it so simple and so easy that it's just like, why is it there? The Dracula fight was at least, I don't want to say rewarding, but it was like, okay, executing is maybe a bit clunky because of the controls and everything. I think the controls in Super Mario Land are like quite good, and I still the intended method to beat the boss, I feel, didn't work well.
Sure.
Just the entire boss fight didn't feel satisfying to me.
That's fair.
But it was definitely easy. So
how about your best?
So best, I have the level 1 knight from Castlevania.
Okay.
So despite Castlevania having kind of like weird controls that we've already talked about and all of that, I did quite like the knight. One, I just like the sprite. I like it as a character. It looks cool in the manual, all of that fun stuff. But it felt like a good, I don't know, culmination of the first level of Castlevania.
It is.
You had to use, a little bit of platforming, but it wasn't quite to the point where it was annoying. And yeah, it felt like a good culmination and challenging enough without, actually being challenging.
Okay. That's okay. I can see that. Yeah.
What was your favorite boss?
My favorite boss was Dragon Zamasu, the Super Mario Land boss from World 2.
Okay.
The seahorse dragon that's in the underwater stage, which I can see some people maybe really not liking that boss or the cloud boss in the later stage because the shmup sections in Super Mario Land are so different from a regular Mario game, but that's actually part of why I like it so much.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good break. I think that it really sets Super Mario Land apart in an interesting way on the Game Boy.
I agree with that.
It's funny, I actually think that the alternate way to beat the boss is handled really well here, where it isn't in the stage 3 boss that you were just talking about, because you can either shoot your little pellets or whatever at Dragon Zamasu and destroy it, after hitting it however many times, and you get that amazing wow wow sound that I love.
So good.
Or you can go underneath if you're fast enough and break some blocks and then just skip right to the little pedestal thing and hit it, and Dragon Zamasu just dies and disappears, and you move on without actually having to shoot the boss. You just take this little alternate route. And I think that that's actually really interesting because it gives you an alternate way to beat the boss. Either one is designed intentionally and feels good to use.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's also nice that all of the bosses in Super Mario Land can be, taken out with projectiles. Also, yeah, the sound effect is super. I enjoy it a lot. And it also, I think, gives a very clear indication that this is hurting them or damaging them. So
yes,
I think that was definitely a good boss fight as well.
Awesome.
Moving on to our next category. So this is action gameplay. So this isn't gameplay as a whole. It's kind of what had the most action feeling gameplay or made you feel, kind of maybe got your heart beat up a little bit or, whatever. So what was the worst action gameplay for you?
Even if I wasn't looking at the sheet right now, which I am, full disclosure for everybody listening, I already know that we would have the same answer on this one because it was baseball.
Yeah, 100%. Baseball was the most boring game that we played by far.
It is.
I think that's enough said about that. We don't need to hammer baseball too much.
Right. I know we spent a bunch of time just grilling that game, but just to put a fine point on it here, for a game that is supposed to be action sports, it was as intense and interesting as watching the most passive baseball game that you could ever be a spectator for, except you were the one holding the controls the whole time.
Exactly. Enough said on that. What was the best action gameplay?
Okay, so this one might seem a little strange because we have got done talking about bad controls, but I went with Castlevania The Adventure.
Okay. I guess what made you go with that?
Even though the controls were bad and frustrating in some places, it's not like the controls were just completely irredeemable and I wish I had never picked the game up or anything. It was just that they were actively harmful and frustrating in certain situations. But when they were complementary to the game experience, I would say basically all of stage 1, and then the intro of stage 4 in particular, I think are real highlights. The controls and the game feel, the way things looked and how your character was able to dispatch enemies and stuff like that all came together to really make you feel that classic, tried and true sort of Castlevania experience that a lot of people come to those games for. So
I can see that for sure. I chose Super Mario Land. I just love the controls. I love how, quick it is, how you can, really feel like you're speedrunning through it.
Yes.
And, I think that's fun. You can take your time, explore each pipe and do all of that stuff. Or you can just kind of jump past everything and, yeah, really move through the levels. And I appreciate that it has that flexibility.
It was a tough call. If it wasn't going to be Castlevania, it probably would have also been Super Mario Land for me. So I can totally see why that's the one that you went with for this category.
All right. Talking about some level design. What was your least favorite level?
Worst level design was absolutely Castlevania The Adventure, hands down.
Yeah. So this is broad, or if there's a specific level, that's kind of what we're talking about in this category. I felt some levels of Castlevania were very good. I thought level 3, which this was kind of the auto scroller, if you will, that we talked about in length in the episode.
The instant death auto scroller.
Yes, it was just so bad. A little bit of spoiler, my runner-up for best level design was level 1 of Castlevania. I feel like it was just put you in a good setting. It was, a good way to learn the controls, do some of those things. Level 3 was just really bad for me.
See, Castlevania for me, and the reason that I didn't put a specific level is because, yes, level 3 of Castlevania The Adventure is hands down the worst. Worst level out of any of the games that we played. Bad design. The frustrations of the game itself are amplified so bad in that level because of all of the extra pressure from the instant death stuff that can come after you and everything else like that. But it's really the whole game. Like, it was really all of Castlevania The Adventure, because even in level 1, which I did like, and I think was a good culmination of what you would want and kind of expect from the game that you were playing, there's this section in level 1 where you're trying to do platform jumps across these skinny platforms, and I spent way, way too long doing that for me to not think of that level too.
Yeah.
So there really is no winning on Castlevania The Adventure. It was sort of like it ranged from bad to excruciatingly bad. There was always something that was like, man, why did they do this? What possessed them to do this particular thing for this level right now?
Yeah, that's very fair. And I think level 1 gets a pass because it's kind of teaching you the platforming. It's not an instant death when you fall. So, I gave it a little bit of pass, but I can definitely understand where you're coming out with that. What do you have as your best level design?
My best level design, I put Super Mario Land, just as a whole.
Yeah, specifically I put 2-3, which is the sub-level, but I can definitely see as a whole, it just had extremely good levels. Very clean, very just good level design in general, I would say.
I think it's exactly what you were talking about when you were mentioning how it feels like the levels could be speed ran.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the good level design. The level design was so fluid and made it so that you could kind of go from point A to point B. And if you didn't want to stop and explore the pipes for extra lives or whatever like that, if you got a rhythm going and you were pressing the buttons at the right time, you could pretty much just clear a level, start to finish in seconds, minutes.
Yeah, it gave you options on how to play, which I appreciate, because a lot of the other games were a bit more linear. Castlevania, you didn't have options. You went through the motions. Mm-hmm. Super Mario, the levels were designed in a way that gave you, the option of exploring a bit more or just going fast.
And even at the end of the Super Mario Land levels, you have 2 exits.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to try for the bonus exit, or do you want to just go to the one on the bottom floor and be done with the level as fast as possible?
Yep. All around, really good. Super Mario Land just crushed it with that.
Yep.
Our next category, best or least favorite single mechanic. What was the mechanic you appreciated the least?
Oh boy, there's nothing else that could have taken this spot other than the way that they shrink your paddle in Alleyway.
Agreed. Yeah, we both immediately, I think, locked that in for our answers. It just feels bad. And again, we spoke about it in the episode at more length, but when you hit the roof, your paddle shrinks, and it feels like you're being punished for playing the game correctly, and that's just bad.
It sucks and it's stupid, and I hate it.
Exactly. We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. What was your most appreciated mechanic?
The Super Ball power-up from Super Mario Land.
Okay. Why was that?
It's just so fun. I know that fire flowers, like in the other Mario games, they also sort of like do a little bit of a bounce when the fireball like leaves Mario's hands or whatever. But the Super Ball bounces top to bottom, off the walls, whatever else, and you can bounce it at angles to hit enemies as you're running. You can bounce it off the floor or whatever to hit an enemy that's in your way of a jump. I think it's great that they let you get the extra utility out of it because it collects coins for you too, which is just really fun, especially when you go into a pipe and there's a secret room and you throw a Super Ball and it just starts picking up a bunch of coins that you can't reach. I think Super Mario Land would have still been pretty okay without it, but because it is there, it just compounded an already fun game, and it really elevates Super Mario Land to kind of classic status, I feel.
I could see that. Yeah, I was a bit thrown off because, I love me a fire flower, but the utility that it adds, I think, is beneficial, and it is unique. I chose maybe a bit strange, but the ball control from tennis.
You are gonna have to explain yourself on this one. I'm sorry.
So, yeah, maybe a little bit of like a dark horse contender here, but essentially in tennis, when you hit the ball, you could kind of hold the D-pad left, right, forward, back, and that would affect how your ball went. If it went to the left, if it was like a harder shot, if it was less of a shot. I think I had mentioned a little bit earlier that I really like things that feel intuitive, and I really like when mechanics or gameplay or that sort of thing, you kind of pick up naturally, or as you're playing, you kind of, just accidentally do it or whatever, right? You figure it out without having to go and read the manual. And that was what happened with me on tennis. Is I was playing, I think halfway through my first game or something like that, and I noticed that I kept hitting it to the center of the court. And so I was like, oh, I wonder how much I can control this, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, just kind of stumbled upon it naturally, which I think, again, is a big plus for mechanics with me. And then on top of that, it did feel good. There were times when it felt a little clunky or felt like I maybe messed it up just a bit, or I feel like I shouldn't have messed it up. But for the most part, if I was really trying to get it on the line, sometimes I would overshoot a little bit. Sometimes I, would get it right there. It felt good. It felt intuitive, and it felt like, I don't know, like it was supposed to. And I think it added a lot of depth to a game that otherwise would have been quite boring.
I think that it really makes the case for something that I said, I'm pretty sure in the tennis episode. It kind of makes me hopeful that they will refine what a tennis game on the Game Boy is, and we'll get some better tennis games down the line.
Not to restate too much, but I just really feel like it was a mechanic that made the game better and that was intuitive. And I think that means a lot for me when I'm looking at mechanics and looking at games.
Sure.
So our last category of the mechanics section, difficulty of game. So which game did you find the least difficult?
Super Mario Land. That was a cakewalk.
I agree with that. It took me a little bit longer than you, but cleared it pretty easily. And if I went back and played now, I have played since we recorded the episode.
Oh, nice.
And, first clear, really no issues. Very fun game, but not difficult, I would say.
Coming into it, I had already played Super Mario Land as a kid, as an adult. I've played plenty of it, even fairly recently before starting the show. But even without prior knowledge, it's just easy. The regular kind of hang-ups of other Mario games aren't there as bad, probably because the roster of enemies and typical traps and sort of things like that you might see in some of the other earlier Mario games aren't really there in Super Mario Land. But it's just so smooth. It's such a frictionless experience. You get extra lives really easily. Couldn't have been another answer than Super Mario Land for least difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. What game did you find the most difficult then?
So this was another one that the answer sort of has to be defined. I could see something like a baseball or a tennis being the most difficult, but that's not really how I felt about it. I didn't feel that they were difficult in like oh wow, I'm like bashing my head against a wall here because the computer just feels unbeatable or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were difficult and frustrating for other reasons, but just a most difficult game, I put Tetris.
Okay. I could see that. I put baseball, and I think, yeah, you kind of hit it right on the head. It kind of depends on how you define it. I defined it more as what game do I think would be the most difficult for me to beat? Tetris, I would say technically I beat it. I beat 9-5 or whatever.
Right.
There is no beating the other mode. That is kind of how I took it. And I think I could play baseball for a very long time and not actually win against the computer.
Right. Yeah.
One, because I would probably give up on gaming if I had to play it that much. But also, yeah, it never made sense. It never was like this is what I'm doing wrong. If I just do this better, I'll win. I just don't think I would win a game. So that's kind of where I went with that. But I can also understand the gameplay itself is not difficult.
Like baseball for me, it never felt like, oh, I am just totally out of my depth. I don't know what's going on. I can't figure this game out. It was really a lot more like, oh, okay, well, there are some like fundamental problems here that are preventing me from like enjoying this game, doing a good job, like having a good showing of it. Whereas Tetris was smooth and crisp. Like the controls made sense. I already knew what I was doing pretty much because it's Tetris.
Yeah.
Playing like the endless mode, I could reach a certain speed, like a certain difficulty or whatever, but I kind of would always hit the same cap. And I would know that if I wanted to go beyond that, I would just have to like work at it, like you would any other kind of challenging game that you feel that there is a challenge that you can overcome. You can see yourself at the next like goalpost in Tetris for me. Whereas baseball, the game felt like fundamentally problematic in the way that it was playing and how I felt about playing it, that I would not be like, yes, if I invest enough time into baseball, I will overcome whatever it is that is holding me back from enjoying this and from doing a better job.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And yeah, that's part of the reason why it was mine, is just because I was like, I don't think I would ever beat this game.
Sure.
All right. Is there anything else you kind of want to wrap up these categories with, or speak any more about kind of the mechanics in general of 1989?
I think that I will say for this like sample platter 1989, controls pretty good, for the year. None of the games had controls that were just like abysmal necessarily, except for what we had talked about with Castlevania. Everything else was pretty smooth or, well represented, whatever. Level design, like puzzle design, all those sorts of things, all pretty good. For literally first games out of the gate on the Game Boy, for its very first like half year of existence in the United States, I can't complain too much, like fault too much.
I agree. I think it shows a lot of what the Game Boy is capable of.
Right.
And yeah, to touch back with what we said in the beginning, I think a lot of that is what drove the success of the Game Boy, is that these titles, I think, did a good job of generally showing what the Game Boy could do. And I think people responded well to that.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better.
All right. So yeah, with that, I guess we will take a quick break, and then we'll get back with some more categories, but these will focus more on cosmetics and aesthetics.
That's right. It's ad break time.
I'm sorry, Tony, but some of these older Game Boy games are just bad.
Oh, right. Like you could do any better?
You know what? I probably could.
Yeah? Then do it. Make your own Game Boy game.
Tony, this isn't the 90s. I am not learning assembly.
Not necessary. Just use GB Studio. GB Studio is easy-to-use game-building software that lets you make games for your favorite retro gaming rectangle. With versions available for Windows, Mac, and Linux, it's never been easier to make a game for the Game Boy. And GB Studio's multiple project modes means you can develop for the original DMG, the Super Game Boy, or the Game Boy Color. Using a drag-and-drop style of visual scripting means you don't even need any prior programming knowledge to get started. And the best part is, your work can be built and exported as a fully playable Game Boy ROM, ready for any emulator or flash cart you choose. Learn more or download GB Studio for yourself at www.gbstudio.dev. Can't seem to clear any lines in your Tetris? Stuck underwater in Super Mario Land? The old Pokemon grind got you feeling blue? Then stay tuned to Critical DMG. It won't make you better at Game Boy games, but at least you won't feel so alone in how bad you are at them once you've listened to us. Users must provide their own Game Boy. Batteries not included. Certain conditions apply. Void where prohibited. Critical DMG is not responsible for any worsening gameplay after consuming our podcast. We are back. And now, this is the part of our little award show here where we're going to flip it the same way that we do for a regular episode. And we're now going to talk about the aesthetics and the sound and all of those lovely things that make the Game Boy games the Game Boy games. Our first category. Jeff, why don't you go ahead and give us your worst soundtrack?
Baseball, hands down. Didn't even last very long playing it. It was so annoying. I turned it off pretty quick. So, yeah, very easy answer for me.
I have matched you 100%. Baseball. Not only was it bare bones pretty much to start out with, but the fact that they gave you 2 tracks to pick from, and I didn't particularly care for either of them. You know, that what else can you really say?
Yep.
You know what? You really want to know? Go back and listen to that episode. How about your best soundtrack?
I liked Castlevania. Tetris, the Type A music was close. It's just so iconic, but Castlevania, I think, broadly has the best soundtrack, and a lot of just nostalgic soundtracks that I've listened to remixes and things like that of quite a bit. So definitely Castlevania for me.
Again, I have the same answer. I think that Castlevania The Adventure just had a really stellar soundtrack as far as these first handful of games went. Definitely out of all of the games that we had, it had the widest scope of music available for it, with multiple tracks that played during the levels as you progress through. Same thing with Super Mario Land, and I do have a really soft spot for the Super Mario Land tracks, but just as a showcase of like what the Game Boy was capable of, the music that comes out of Castlevania The Adventure, like Super Mario Land just really doesn't hold a candle to it, no pun intended.
Oh, I didn't catch that until you said that, but yeah, I mean, I could see if you were really nostalgic for the Super Mario Land, that may be edging it out, but I think, yeah, it's just good. It is just good.
Yeah, it is. It is just good music. So our next worst, sort of in the same vein here, how about sound effects?
So I'm pretty sure we're going to disagree on this one because in the episode we disagreed on it. But my least favorite sound effects were from Alleyway. When the ball was bouncing back and forth really quickly and clearing tiles. I feel like it was, jarring, not fun to listen to. I know you felt like it was a bit more musical, but yeah, I did not enjoy that.
You know, for someone who played percussive instruments when we were younger, I feel like you would have more appreciation for something that sounds a little like a xylophone. I'm very surprised here.
I think it's because if it were like on a beat, then sure, but it was sporadic.
Fine. Okay.
It wasn't the sounds necessarily, but it was, the fact that it was sporadic based on how far the ball was moving and all of that. And it just felt like very cluttered. And honestly, I hadn't thought of the percussive thing, but maybe that's part of it is it was not on a beat and it was not consistent. And so that, bugged me.
Your prior musical experience actually shades your opinion here and makes it worse.
Maybe, yeah, subconsciously.
Okay, well, Fine. I guess I'll let that one slide. I actually kind of had a hard time coming up with the worst sound effects here because I really didn't have any other answer but baseball and tennis.
Okay.
Because the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't really shake the feeling that they're sort of the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're both extremely bare bones, almost exactly the same sounds. They both have like a crowd sound, a ball being hit sound,
Mm-hmm.
you know, different like little chirps and things like that. It really felt like almost interchangeable. So I didn't feel right putting one over the other.
That's fair.
Even though I might have different feelings about like tennis versus baseball as a game, for the sound effects, it's like a coin toss. They're basically both the same thing, and I feel that they were both lackluster no matter which one really came out on top or on bottom.
That's fair. That's fair. I still like the thud when you get hit by the tennis ball. I can understand
Yeah,
that.
well, everybody go back and listen to that episode to really get an idea of the maliciousness
There were no
that Jeff is capable
there
of.
was no intentional malicious actions completed.
Yeah, well, we're moving on before you dig yourself into a deeper hole.
All right.
So, how about best sound effects?
I think Castlevania. Soundtrack aside, obviously we've spoken that it's great.
Right.
I think the sound effects were also very good. The whip when you I guess hit a candle and it kind of explodes, or I don't know what candles do in Castlevania, but when it does whatever it does, it's a very satisfying sound. And yeah, I think all of the sound effects just really lend themselves to what they're supposed to be representing, and it's good.
I don't know what candles do.
I mean, I don't know why hitting a candle with a whip, it makes a coin fall out or the candle explode or whatever. Yeah, I didn't question that, but it's a good sound when it happens.
It did. It happened numerous times, and I have the same answer. Castlevania the Adventure, best sound effects. It was probably a toss-up. I probably could have put Super Mario Land here as well because there were a lot of really standout ones in that too. But I think just like as an audio package, Castlevania, I just kind of had to take the edge.
I agree with that.
How about worst overall visuals?
So this had to go to baseball for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very sparse and not exciting, and then slow.
Even tennis makes the two characters that you see literally the entire time you're playing the game look like cute, charming. They're distinct enough, even though they just kind of like darken the palette on one of the characters, that since there's not more than one of them at a time, it's really easy to keep everything readable and whatever else. Baseball is just bland. Nothing stands out. There's no like visual identity to it. The Mario inclusions are also really disappointing, so it doesn't even have that going for it.
Yeah.
I couldn't really think of anything other than baseball to go here.
Even when you do the most exciting thing that you can do in the game and hit a home run, it is just boring. It is the same pop fly visuals that you get. The ball goes out of the park, and then it just in brick letters, home run. No fanfare, no fireworks, nothing.
I went and watched that footage of yours of you knocking the home run just so that I could actually see it, and it was so much more disappointing than I think I had envisioned in my head.
I rewatched it as well while editing my parts of the video. I remember talking about it in the episode and rewatching it. I was like, wow, this is worse than I gave it credit for in the episode. And so, yeah, it's just uninspired. Nothing about it is exciting or fun or anything.
Nope. So on the flip side, how about best overall visuals?
I gave this one to Castlevania.
Me too.
I think a lot of my favorite sprites were in that. I think the levels were very readable. You always kind of knew what you were supposed to be doing, what you could interact with, what you couldn't interact with. And the fact that some of my favorite sprites came from it probably helps a lot.
I agree. I think that a lot of the sprites in there are really good, but I really think what gave Castlevania the edge over, like, say, Super Mario Land, which also had some really nice locales and things like that, is that the background work in Castlevania and the way that the levels were laid out, like apart from the level design, like apart from the actual mechanical level design of the different locales in Castlevania, the way that they looked, like the crumbling ruins kind of facade when you are going into Dracula's castle, the cave and the bridges that you walk over that fall out from underneath you. You know, I can't say enough, I guess, that for this first crop of Game Boy games, for this first year, Castlevania really does, for the US lineup, show what the Game Boy can do.
I agree with that.
You know, it's not like amazingly technical or anything like that, but it really does, I feel, give you a glimpse of the artistry that the Game Boy is capable of. Like, there were definitely times where while I was playing, I could just take a minute and look at the environment that I was in and really think, wow, this is cool. This looks good. And I know part of that is probably me, like, being a Game Boy game developer and artist and stuff like that, you know, so I kind of look for those things to kind of draw inspiration from and think like, wow, they were doing stuff like this on the Game Boy at the time, and it just looks really good. The way that they have the background stuff look like it's in the background by keeping the palettes, the colors on the palette separated. But like, Castlevania definitely got the best overall visuals this year.
You know, one of the things we touched on about Super Mario Land is they use a lot of negative space. I feel like Castlevania they flush it out more. There's a lot more going on, but it's still extremely readable, and you're not confused about what's going on. Like you said, it just kind of edges it above Super Mario Land.
Sure, exactly. Since we were already sort of leaning into it, how about your worst individual sprite?
My answer may not actually make sense because it is more so a lack of a sprite, but it is Mario and Luigi from Baseball.
Okay.
Because they don't exist.
Oh, okay.
Every launch title had Mario in it, except for Tetris. Baseball, you had the names, Mario and Luigi, but there was nothing different with the sprites. They just didn't exist. And I felt like that was just a very low effort inclusion. And yeah, I didn't like it.
What if they did put Mario in Tetris and it was just Mario in like Soviet winter clothes?
Yeah, when you beat one of the 9-123 levels,
it's just Cosmonaut Mario.
Yeah,
it looks like him when he's in the Sky Pop in the shmup stages, and he's just like in his little flyer suit, and he's just climbing in the space shuttle, and away he goes. You know, see, they could have done that.
That would have been great, but they didn't.
Alas,
and they also didn't pretend to, and I feel like Baseball, that's kind of like what rubbed me the wrong way, is they pretended to put Mario and Luigi in the game, and they just they're not there.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, mine, I did put 2. They both come from Castlevania the Adventure, both for kind of similar reasons. The first one is Christopher Belmont, which is the player character, when you pick up the invincibility cross.
Okay, kind of like the flashing.
When you are like strobing, like flashing, I really don't like that. I'm not necessarily photosensitive in any kind of like medical way or anything, but it does get to me. It does hurt my eyes, give me a headache if I have to look at it for too long.
That's fair.
So it is really frustrating.
Yeah. Because
I would actually sort of end up skipping the invincibility crosses when I probably could have used them. Just because I didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah, and it is a lot more jarring than when you get the, superstar in Mario, so...
Right, and I was thinking that same thing. Like, in Super Mario Land, when you get the invincibility in that, your sprite is just kind of, like, phasing in and out. Like, it's flickering. Whereas in Castlevania the Adventure, you are, like, strobing.
Yeah.
Like, you're flashing through all of the colors available for you, and it's just really, really grating on my eyes. The other one that kind of tied is sort of for the same reasons. It's Putaguchi, the little, like, hand-mouth enemy that shoots fireballs.
That, like, sticks out of the... Yeah.
Right. The fireballs that it shoots also are kind of, like, flashing and...
Yeah, I just dislike those. I don't like playing against them, so...
Yeah, just, like, the enemy itself is fine. I especially like its depiction in the manual or whatever, but, like, the fireball it shoots was just a big nothing, pretty much. So I couldn't really pick like a worst overall, but both of my choices for that category did come from Castlevania The Adventure.
That makes sense.
I know that this one is going to be the same for both of us, but go ahead and tell us what our collective favorite individual sprite for this year was.
I like the she-worm.
The she-worm.
The she-worm is just
so good.
So good. I don't know why it's as good as it is. I can't describe why I think that, but it's just good.
Because it's a bug, obviously.
I'm not as like big into bugs as you are, but it's just a good little gal.
I love her. I love her little squirm. I love just perfect. I can only deign to make a sprite as amazing as the she-worm.
I did actually have a close second, which is the Mechabon from Super Mario Land. So the little robot that throws his head at you.
Sure, they are super cute.
I really like that one as well. She-worm definitely won out, but that was a close second for me.
That's fair. The Mechabon is really cute. I wouldn't have been surprised if you had chosen that one for your overall. But yeah, she-worm sweep.
Easy.
So this is going to be probably a difficult one just because there was so few games to pick from that really even had anything to measure for this category. But what did you pick for worst story?
Yeah, so obviously we're discounting baseball. You know, it doesn't have a story. You're just playing baseball. I chose Alleyway. I feel like it was supposed to have a story. I just don't understand what or why or anything.
I'm pretty sure that this is exactly what you were just talking about with how they like put Mario on the box for baseball and then Mario's not there. Why?
Yeah, he's piloting a spacecraft in the entrance to the alleyway. And again, it feels like they tried to make a story, but I'm just like, what? Why does it need a story? But I guess it didn't.
Even if they wanted to give it one, it could be anything. Stick a princess in there. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's almost like worst story by default because again, there just really wasn't any real meat to go on for this year. That'll change. How about best story?
I have Super Mario Land. So one, Heart Daisy. I love that Daisy is in this one.
I love Daisy.
And yeah, I just think it's, kind of the same old story that you're used to with Super Mario of the princess is not in this castle and you're going through and trying to save the princess. So it's you're in a new land. I guess you're in Sarasa Land. You're not in the Mushroom Kingdom. You're not fighting Bowser per se. You're fighting Tatonga. And so enough of a twist on the same story that I found it cute and really kind of endearing, and I liked it. And I could understand it, unlike Alleyway. I knew what was going on for the most part.
And Mario sweeps Daisy off her feet or whatever and like flies her away in his little Sky Pop aircraft at the end. What more do you want?
Yeah, in a jet plane.
I went with Castlevania The Adventure for the best story, and I could almost say that this was, again, sort of like by default. From the get-go, you are understanding that, whether you know who this guy that you're playing as is, you're on your way through Dracula's castle, lots of creepy monsters, whatever, you're trying to stop Dracula. This is a category that when we do this for 1990 and beyond, we are definitely going to have a lot more to pick from and some games with like actual stories like to get through and whatever else.
Yeah. I will give you, I feel Castlevania has like actual lore, right? It has a consistent story throughout. Our protagonist is the 100-year-old ancestor of another protagonist in the series. And
oh my gosh, who could know,
but,
right?
While that's not explained in the game, at least it does have this lore, and it has an overall, I guess, story arc where, Super Mario doesn't really have that. It's kind of the same story recycled. So I can definitely see where you're coming at with that.
Okay. Last category for our aesthetics section here is worst individual visual experience.
So, for me, it was pretty easily the Super Mario Land waterfall.
100%.
Yeah, more or less. It had that strobe effect that, you kind of were speaking about earlier.
Oh, it's awful in there though. It's
over the entire screen. Yeah.
At least the Christopher invincibility cross effect is like localized to just the sprite itself, but oh lord, when you are walking through the waterfall section and like the entire background of the screen is doing that.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Like there was literally nothing that came to my mind that could have replaced this as worst visual experience. Like,
yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Actively difficult to look at for any period of time. And like nothing we played this year even came close to making me feel that way.
Yep, easy answer for me.
Wrapping that up, how about your best individual visual experience?
So this might also be kind of a weird one.
Oh yeah, you are going to have to explain your case on this one, my friend.
Especially with how fondly we've spoken of this game, but
is this some kind of nostalgia bait? Is that what this is?
No.
Is this some kind of Jeff nostalgia for baseball here?
No, because it doesn't happen in real baseball. So I chose when the innings change, your little pitcher runs out to the mound, and when he gets to the mound, all of the fielders and the pitcher, like they all raise their hands, and they just kind of like stand with their hands raised for a second, and then it goes into, actually playing the game. I don't know why, I just really enjoyed that. It's weird. Like I said, it doesn't happen in baseball. Like that's not a thing that happens in baseball. You never see,
That's
professional.
Just you wishing it did. Well, I wish this was how my baseball games went.
And I don't even think that. Like I do think it would be equally as weird for like, yeah, you watch a Major League Baseball game and all of the players just raise their hands for no reason. But like the sprites were like, it was the small version of the sprite. And so it was like kind of cute and yeah, just kind of like weird and bizarre. And while I found the inning changes to be very slow, at least that was something that I kind of like chuckled at or, was like, oh, okay. And so it like
all right,
gave a little bit of respite, even despite everything else of that game.
You were just beaten into submission by baseball so bad that when this like charming little moment happened for those few seconds, you're like, oh wow, this is the best thing I've seen all of 1989.
Yeah, in the past hour, this is the best thing that's happened to me.
It's like a drink of cold water in the desert.
So yeah, that was what I chose.
Fine and fair. All right. So my best individual visual experience was Castlevania The Adventure, the intro section of Stage 4. And I definitely go into this more in that episode. And boy, howdy, is it a long trek to get to Stage 4. So I don't know if I would necessarily say it was worth to do that. But you are going through a section of these knights in armor. I'm assuming what is supposed to be like empty suits of armor.
Yeah.
And they're in the background, light color, so that they look like background. And as you walk past them, some of them pop out as enemies you have to take care of. Spoiler, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to surprise anyone.
You know what? If they watch the episode or anything, they've seen the footage on YouTube. But like after you get through there, when you go into the castle section, the background, they use those tiles to depict like the crumbling facade of like Dracula's castle interior or whatever. And it just looks really good. It was literally the first time since we've been doing this, like for these games, that I really had to stop and be like, wow, this looks so good. Like, I can't wait for more Game Boy games that do stuff like this.
That's fair. I think I was just beaten down by Stage 3. So at that point, I was like, I'm ready to fight Dracula, but...
You're just like going through the game with your eyes closed, just like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah, they do a very good job of exactly what you were saying, kind of representing that yeah, you're heading into a castle. It's a little dilapidated, a little rundown, but
right. And you get to feel like magic of the place, you know, the enemy armor suits like coming to life and things like that. It's just good. It was like really good visual thing to take a minute and just enjoy, like especially when paired with the music that plays during that. That level is actually really good too. Anything else for the aesthetics section before we move on to our superlatives? Because I don't get a quiz this episode.
No, I think I've covered everything that I wanted to.
I think I have too. I will, I guess, say here for the aesthetics, same as the mechanics, pretty good overall for 1989. Maybe a little ho-hum just because a lot of the games were so barren as far as visual stuff goes that a lot of it wasn't super great, but it also wasn't super awful. You know, it feels kind of just like nothing really to write home about, middle of the road, except for those really few like standout moments like in Castlevania or Super Mario Land, whatever.
Or like the baseball fielders raising their hands.
Yeah, or the baseball fielders raising their hands. But like, I would probably say the mechanics were better this year than the visuals. I have a feeling that that's not going to be the case going forward.
I would agree with that. And I think for the first batch of games, it probably makes sense to not overload, not necessarily the hardware, but people playing the games, you know, not going too heavy on the cosmetics. So definitely interested to see how it compares to next year and the years to come.
Okay, well, with an episode this long, I think we should take a second ad break and then we'll be back.
All right.
And thanks for making it this far.
Exactly.
Are you making a Game Boy game? Awesome. But, how does it sound? 'Cause if it isn't something like this, or maybe like this, or possibly something like this, you might want to do something about that. And I know just who can help. Tip Top Tomcat specializes in authentic Game Boy audio that's been used in over 50 projects so far. If you need something quick, you can find bundles of pre-made Game Boy audio assets ready and waiting on tiptoptomcat.itch.io. But if you need something more custom, reach out directly by emailing thetiptoptomcat@gmail.com with inquiries about commission availability. And remember, you don't want your Game Boy game to just sound good. You want it to sound tip-top. You know, the original Game Boy might not have been internet connected, but we sure are. So if you'd like to reach out to us, you could find us on Blue Sky at criticaldmgpod.bsky.social, or you could email us at criticaldmgpod@gmail.com, and either of those will get to us faster than you would expect for people who are stuck on tech from the 1990s. That wraps up all of the main categories, but now we have some superlatives. These are like silly, one-off. We gave them all kind of silly names. We'll explain, why we chose what we did, and we'll give a little bit of information on the choices that we made for these categories. But we'll probably get through them maybe a little bit faster. So our first one is Noob's First Game. So what we mean by that is this would be the game that we would recommend to someone who had not played a Game Boy game before. What did you put for this one, Jeff?
I put Super Mario Land.
That's fair.
So I think we both agreed that it had a pretty low barrier to entry, and it's just a fun game and iconic.
Yeah, those are all good reasons. I can see that. I went with Alleyway. I think that especially if you are someone who was familiar with like arcade games, or was looking for something like really self-contained, Alleyway is easy to pick up. It's fun. It does have like Mario charm. I think it's a good entry point for the Game Boy.
Yeah, I could buy Alleyway. Our next category is Stop, Drop, and Play. So essentially, if we weren't recording right now, what game would we pick up and play? What did you choose?
I, believe it or not, went with Castlevania The Adventure.
All right.
My reasoning there is I have dabbled in speedrun stuff, so I do like to look at what kind of techs that people use sometimes for especially these more difficult games. And I wonder if there's anything there that might show me like something I was missing. But I'm also interested in looking into the improvement patches that I've seen around to see like what the game's potential really could be.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fair. I chose Tetris.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just an extremely iconic game. Replayability is through the roof. You know, it's always going to be a little bit different, and it's always going to be, there is no real end. So you can always kind of pick it back up and play it again. And I've played Tetris multiple times throughout the years. So
Tetris is classic for a reason.
Exactly.
I totally get that as a choice. Next superlative is just a little tune-up. And for this one, we are talking about something about one of the games that we've played that if it was fixed, it would make the game so much higher up on, you know, whatever imaginary ranking we have of all of these games. It would really give it like a significant boost. So what did you put?
I put Castlevania's movement and platforming. So
okay.
I think if you've listened to us, that's pretty self-explanatory. So much to the fact that there are, you know, you had just mentioned that there are patches and things that do that.
Exactly.
So I think it would be an easy thing to just really elevate an already good game to just fantastic.
That's totally fair. I actually went with, and this one might shock you, I think that tennis could improve a lot in my eyes with just some sort of dive or recovery so that you are better able to cover your bases a little bit easier instead of having to constantly try and navigate yourself like back toward the center, and the movement feeling a little stiff maybe wouldn't even matter so much if you had just like a kind of like an emergency dive or a sprint or something like that. And it really would have like lifted the game to probably a much more positive review from me than it ever would have got otherwise.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Our next category, kids just don't know. So this is, what games do we wish we would have played as a kid that we didn't? Some of these games we have played, a lot of them we haven't. Having played them now, which ones do we think we would have really enjoyed as a kid?
I went with Alleyway again.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's fair.
I had never played this. I had never played Alleyway as a kid. I mean, I'm pretty sure I had played some sort of Breakout clones or something like that when I was a kid, either in the arcade or whatever else. But I actually really would have enjoyed having this in my hands as a kid because it's just fun. And I think as a kid, I would have sunk a lot more time into it, and maybe the little nitpicks about it wouldn't have really bothered me so much. I don't know. Like, I had Super Mario Land as a kid, so that one, you know, it couldn't have been that. Same thing with Tetris. So it couldn't have been either of those, but I don't know. Alleyway, I think, is my pick. Yeah.
I didn't play Super Mario Land growing up, so that was a pretty easy. That was my choice.
Uh-huh.
I think it was just a very good game. I think it was easy enough that kid me could have done all right and not gotten really stuck. And yeah, didn't play it. And so that was kind of an easy pick for me.
Totally fair. The next category is LOL, and this is what game that we played that just gave us like the funniest moment or made us laugh the most while we played, or just something that really tickled our funny bone in that way. What did you pick?
So I picked Castlevania, and not because I thought it was funny, but
Oh, it's hilarious. Dracula?
Level 3, there were just so many times that it was kind of like one of those, I was laughing in pain of just how bad it was. And so that's what I went with, a little bit maybe against the the category a little bit, but the most time just like, what is going on, and just kind of laughing to myself.
I totally understand. My pick is pretty much the same. I went with tennis because there was so much of the time where I really thought I knew what I was doing or that I was getting a handle on it. And then I would just like miss, like totally whiff the ball and not even come close. Or I would go to swing my racket and the ball would just like drop dead right in front of me. And I had no other choice but to laugh because I thought I was getting it. And apparently I just really didn't. If I had been recording audio for those sections, it would be a lot of me just like helpless laughter, because what else can you do?
And I guess that kind of brings us to our next category, which is, why am I here? So what game made us kind of question if this was all worth it? So not necessarily the worst game overall, but what game just kind of, made you question life as you were sitting there, slogging through.
Made you wonder if you really want to do this for another 500 games or whatever it's going to be.
So what was your choice?
Baseball.
Yeah, I agree. That was really the only game that I midway through was like, I don't think I want to continue playing this game anymore. And didn't really make me wonder if I wanted to continue on. But if there are too many more games that are that bad, which there definitely will be, it'll be an adventure.
I think that Castlevania could have easily been this game for me, but because of the modern tools that we have that allow us to not have to slug through the game like pure cartridge style, for something like that really, really colors in the experience to not make it so miserable. Like, obviously, if we were having to go in totally unfettered, it would be a whole different story.
Yeah. If I had to play through level 3 as many times as I should have, then that would have probably gotten up there.
Yeah. Castlevania could have been here, but modern convenience sort of really edged Castlevania's case out of this category. Baseball was one that I was more than happy to just not play after about 20 minutes.
Yep.
All right. Next superlative, gotta read the book. And what we mean by this one is something that stuck out to us that made the manual for a game really worth reading. And this one might be a little bit difficult because not every game's manual is available. Like, some of them just haven't really been preserved. Luckily for this one, we were able to read them all and get an idea of the art and things in them. So, Jeff, what was your thing that made one of these games manuals really like stick out to you?
So mine was Castlevania. Generally, I think the manual is pretty good. It is a little tongue-in-cheek. They don't take it too seriously, but also, kind of try to tell you a story, which I like. The art in it is good. I like depictions of the she-worm and all of those things.
She-worm.
But specifically, there was a note about the time limit. And it reads, "Note, there's a time limit in each stage, and if you fail to destroy the primary evil or Count Dracula before it expires, you'll expire."
Oh.
That's great. I just found that very funny. I don't know. It's just it's explaining what a time limit is.
But it's a good line. Yeah, it's a good line. And it's like, they could have just been like, there's a time limit. If you don't reach the end of the stage, you'll have to start over, or, like really blasé.
Yeah, exactly.
But they didn't. They played it up. They commit to the bit, and I love that.
Committing to the bit. They very much so commit to the bit, and so that was my answer.
I almost went with the Castlevania The Adventure Manual because I really do like the art. Like, that's one of my favorite things about these manuals is the artistic depiction of like what the sprites are envisioned to be. And that's sort of why I went with Super Mario Land, actually, over Castlevania, because there's just something about this era, late 80s, early 90s era of what Super Mario characters looked like and the way that they were drawn that I really appreciate. I love the almost childlike, dreamy kind of quality that a lot of the character illustrations have in the manual and like in this era. It's just so cute to look at. Even the enemies are depicted as being like adorable and googly eyed and whatever else. And they illustrate like the different things you can do. And there's just so many good like little one-off illustrations in there. So it had to be Super Mario Land.
I can definitely see that. So our next one is The More You Know.
Rainbows and stars.
Essentially just like what our favorite fact or revelation or, kind of whatever we've learned, either directly about these games or just kind of generally for this time frame. So what was your favorite little factoid?
I love reading old game magazines.
Oh, yeah?
I grew up with like Nintendo Power, PSM, Electronic Gaming Monthly, like all of the older magazines that were available. My mom was a librarian, so I would be able to get a lot of the issues like hot off the press or whatever through their subscription. So being able to revisit those and like look through them for like critical opinion of the games that we're talking about at the time, or if they have like walkthroughs or tips and stuff like that. It's so nostalgic and so charming. It's not always great. There's definitely some really stupid takes and stuff from back in the day. But looking through Nintendo Power and Famitsu, the Japanese gaming magazine, like going through all those things and seeing like especially fan art from like forever ago.
Oh yeah.
It's so good. So being able to do that again, like for this show was super great.
Mine is a little less, mine's just Daisy and Super Mario Land. And I think I mentioned this in the episode, but I am aware of Daisy. I know that she exists. I know she's part of the canon and all of that. I just had no idea where she kind of came from. And it was cool kind of seeing that and, kind of learning those origins and playing through them.
Yeah, Daisy is Princess of Sarasa Land. So like all of the Sarasa Land stuff is wrapped into Daisy's character. That's why like I love the depictions of Daisy where they draw her with like darker skin because like the Sarasa Land area is supposed to be this like desert, kind of tropical in some places, like
close to the equator, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And my voice is starting to go, so I apologize for everybody. This has definitely been a long one. The next superlative, actually, no, this is our last superlative. Okay. Final superlative.
Yep, last superlative.
Is surprise. So what we mean by surprise is what game that we played was surprising to us in like a good or a bad way compared to maybe what our expectations of it were. So what did you pick here?
Mine was tennis. Obviously, we didn't, speak too highly of tennis, but I honestly had a decent time with it. I was expecting to really, really dislike it, and maybe there's a little bit of, hindsight bias or something going from tennis to baseball and that coloring my view a little bit.
I'm wondering how much of it is that. Like, baseball was so much worse. How much more fondly does it make you look back on tennis now?
I'm not going to question that too much, but that was my that was my choice. Is tennis, it felt better than I thought it was going to. So
like I said, my biggest takeaway from tennis was I hope there are better tennis games down the line.
Yeah, it was close. But it was still, I had fun.
Right. That's fair. So my surprise was Tetris.
Okay.
And my reasoning for this is because I really thought I was going to go into Tetris and come out the other side liking it. I do like puzzle games. I like Tetris. Like, I'm not like super big on Tetris, but like I like it well enough. I prefer like Tetris Attack.
Okay.
And other like Tetris spin-offs more than I like core Tetris. Like, I can appreciate that it's a classic and that it is handled really well with the Game Boy as its vehicle, but my overall opinion on it was just kind of like, eh. I went in with high expectations, I guess, and came out on the other side just kind of like shrug.
So that, like we said, is our last superlative, but we do have two more, really it's one more category, but two more awards that we're going to give, and these are best worst game overall. So, Tony, what was your least favorite game that we've covered in 1989?
Baseball.
Yeah, I don't think this is a shock to anyone. Clearly baseball. And that's, I think that's enough we need to say about that. I think we've
in every category, like bad sound, bad graphics, bad gameplay, like even if it didn't take the crown in every single category for the year end here, like it was not going to be winning any of those or coming anywhere close. So baseball,
yeah,
there's nothing else to say about it. I'm glad to see it go. I salute you, baseball.
Yeah, what you said, take me out of the ball game.
Take me out of this ball game, yes. And I'm so glad to never come back to that one.
Truer words have never been said. All right, so yeah, very easy decision there. What was your most favorite game?
I went with Super Mario Land.
Yeah, I did as well.
It feels like the de facto in a way, but it's just, I mean, it's just good. It's just fun. It's simple. It's short. And I know that that's like maybe a contentious thing, but I'm old and don't have a lot of time to like invest in the games long term. So being able to play through something that delivers a package that sounds good and looks good, is fun to play, responsive controls. I mean, Super Mario Land, flagship title on Game Boy for a reason.
Exactly. 100% agree. I think there may have been a few things that were close. You know, Tetris and Castlevania, for me, probably close. But yeah, Super Mario Land just edges them out. And like you said, there's something nice about a game that you can kind of sit down 30 minutes to an hour, wrap up with it, and move on. It's good, and it's fun. It's fun the entire time. And you can kind of do little challenges. You know, you can try and go really fast. You can try to explore a little bit more. So it's not extremely repetitive gameplay, even though it's the same 4 levels.
Right. You can revisit it and sort of give yourself new reasons to have fun with it.
Exactly.
And I really appreciate that. So yeah, Super Mario Land.
Good job, Super Mario Land.
Yay.
I think that's the end of kind of our awards. Is there anything else you want to say kind of to wrap that up? Or do you want to continue on to the next and kind of last thing that we're going to talk about?
No, I mean, we already said at the beginning of this episode, 1989 overall for the year, pretty middling, you know, half and half, good and bad. I am looking forward to having more to choose from in the next year.
Since you said that, that's a great segue into the last topic that we really want to talk about is what we're looking forward to next year. So you've mentioned a few games earlier, but yeah, in the 1990 releases, what are you really looking forward to?
I think it's really going to be interesting that in 1990 and beyond, but specifically in 1990, we're going to start to see the licensed games. And I know that a lot of people correlate licensed games with just like automatically being bad. And I have found that that's not really the case. Like, yeah, a lot of the times they can be bad, but just because a game has a license stuck on it doesn't mean that it's going to just automatically be bad. And I want to see if that holds up here. So like Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle.
Yeah, we get a few superhero games. We get Batman and Spider-Man. I'm interested to see kind of how those play.
Exactly. There's going to be a Ninja Turtles game, a Godzilla game.
Excited about that one too.
There's going to be a Snoopy game, which I'm a big Peanuts fan. So a DuckTales game as well. So like there's going to be a bunch of licensed games that I'm really interested to see how they hold up. There's also continuing of like porting other games that have already come out for like arcade or something like that. So we're going to get our first Paperboy in 1990. That's going to be interesting. Looking through the list for 1990, there's not a lot that I've already played. If we're talking about games that I played like as a kid, there is probably not much at all. I'm not seeing any of these games that I had as a kid. None of these come to my mind as like, oh, right, I definitely played that one as a kid.
I think there may have been, I may have played Dr. Mario. I'm really excited about our first Final Fantasy game.
Right.
So that's a franchise that I enjoy. And so I'm interested to see kind of our first entry into that.
And that's still going to be basically the only real like story-driven turn-based RPG that we're going to get pretty much for that entire year.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a lot of like puzzles, platformers, action platformers. There's some more sports stuff.
Yep.
Especially the things like 1990 is where a lot of the games that came out in Japan in 1989 will actually finally be moved over to get a US release as well. So like the golf game, like things like that, they already came out in 1989 in Japan, but we doing this for US releases will actually be getting them for the year 1990.
Yep. Yeah. So I think a lot to look forward to. Anything else you want to add, or?
I think I think I am giving my prediction, because this is going to take us a lot longer than the 1989 roundup did. I think there's like 10 times as many games for 1990 as there has been for 1989. So it'll definitely be a lot to get through for everyone following along here at Critical DMG.
Mm-hmm.
But I am entering my mind palace and coming out with a prediction that I feel like 1990 is going to have more. I feel like there's going to be more thumbs up than thumbs down, but we'll have to see how well that prediction holds up in the end.
Hopefully. Yeah. I mean, I think there will be probably a lot more hits and probably a lot more misses, but that's just what happens when you have 60 more games or something like that. So
that's right.
So yeah, we'll see. Thanks for listening to Critical DMG. If you would like to support us further, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe recommend us to your friends or anyone else you know who might like the show. It really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And with that, I think that brings us to an end. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Next week, we are going to start our 1990 adventure with, one of the games that came out in Japan a little bit earlier, but we didn't get it until 1990, and that is going to be Motocross Maniacs.
I have never heard of this. We are going into 1990 totally blind.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Let's see if we can, ride some dirt bikes or something.
Oh boy. Well, until then, goodbye to the 80s and hello 1990s.
Hello 90s.
Bye.
Bye-bye.